Hello, welcome back in here to Wenzel's World. And so I'm sitting here this afternoon, late afternoon, and I got me a pipe out here. This one is the Aaron Gold Bra is the name of this pipe. And so a lot of things going on around me. Some things you can see and some things you can hear and some things I'm wondering what I hear. Okay, so if I act a little distracted, it might be that we won't even finish this one. We'll start up another one. But anyway, let that be as it may. We'll keep it going. So, where were we? Oh, I got a lot to say in a short time to say it, I feel. But who's to say we do have a short time? Again, this pipe right here is an Aaron Gold Bra. Okay. And within this pipe today, I've got a blend that when I first got it last year, I didn't like it. So I jarred it up, put it away. I hadn't smoked it till maybe last week before last. And I like it a lot better. And it is Peterson's Sherlock Holmes. So it's gotten a lot better. So in the jar, sitting around in the dark. So let me get me a sip of this water. Went to the spring today and got our spring water. Good spring water. It cleanses the palate. Yeah, there's a spring about, I think it's 9 miles from where we live. So we go up there and get our drinking and cooking water. So we wash with the city water. They, of course, they pipe city water in out in the country nowadays. So, well, we are returning to the land. I've had some interest in the video that I put out yesterday about going back to the land. And there's been there's been some, like I say, interest in it and different comments made about gardening and things like that. But one comment in particular was a question, and usually I don't do more than one video a week. But because of the question and the time of the year it is, I thought maybe I needed to address this particular question, and that is raising hogs in order to process for food. So I want to think about that today. And there's different things you need to say about hogs, pigs, pork, swine, whatever you want to call them now. So anyway, we just always call them hogs. A pig is something that's smaller than a grown hog. Okay, when it comes to hogs, there's different breeds. You've got male and female. You've got a what is called a boar hog, or you got a sow, which are grown, and then you've got a gilt, and then you've got which is a young female, and then you've got one of three names, whatever you want to call a castrated male. I've heard them called bars, bears, and when you look at the word, it looks like barrel. Okay, so whatever you want to call a castrated male hog. Okay, and that's really the kind you want to get to be able to raise to slaughter for your food. The first thing, if you got children in the family, they're going to go out and see these pigs, these hogs as they're being raised. They're going to feed them. Do not name them. When you start naming your livestock that you're going to not have very long to sell, to process for food, when you start naming them, it's hard for the children to give up their pet. And that's basically how they're going to look at it. So you need to have it drilled in their head. Don't name them. We're going to eat these for food. That way, when you finally get them on the table, they won't be sitting there thinking, "Oh man, this is porky." Okay, okay, all right. You said, "Well, we." Somebody might be saying, "Well, I'm going to try this, and we don't have any kids. We ain't got nothing to worry about." Well, that's good. Somebody else might. Don't let the wife name them either, and don't you name them. Okay, unless you got the guts to forget about the names and just see, I'm living in a different time and a different era. Okay, so therefore, then, of course, I'm living in the now. But anyway, so let's get off of that. First thing you're gonna have to do, you're gonna have to decide then where to get these hogs. You can go to Facebook Marketplace. You can go to the auction barn. You can go down to your local feed store, and by that I mean a meal that's processing food, feed, or a feed store, maybe something other than these chain feed stores. They might not know somebody, but sometimes when you got local people that's in business to run a feed store, they're going to be more acquainted with the farmers and talk to them. And it could be there may be some ads put on the wall somewhere in there about we want to buy this, we got this for sale, and so forth. So you got to figure out where to get them and what age you want. Okay, the closer you get to them being topped out. Okay, there's a term right there. That means a topped out hog is going to be something like 225 to 250 pounds. When you go to market, that's what you want it to be. That's what it's. That's what you're gonna get the most money for. Now you can go on up more than that. You can go 275, 280, 300, 325, 350. I mean, they get big. So it's just according to how big you want to raise these hogs up. You could get two, raise one, and sell the other. You could, if you raise them up big enough, you could raise up two and not let them get so big, not let them get over, 275, 80 pounds. And another thing, you said, well, how do you know how much the weight? Well, right there is where you going to have to fool with this stuff a while. Now, you can buy tape, measuring tapes that's designed for certain animals, and you can get pretty close in the correct ballpark of how much they weigh. You can load them up, haul them off somewhere or another to a scale, load them in your truck, load them in a trailer, get up on a scale somewhere or another that's built to take that type of load, automobiles and trailers. You can find out how much it weighs and then unload them and then come back and then weigh your empty truck and trailer. You can do that. But anybody messes with this regular, they've messed with it so much they can look at an animal, whichever animal it is, and they can tell you about in the ballpark how much they weigh. So anyway, then you have to decide then what you want to get, and if you're going to slaughter them, I recommend you to get the castrated males, bears, barrels, bars, whatever you want to call them. Okay, if you get them cheaper if you get pigs, piglets, winged pigs. They'll be cheaper if you get them that way. Okay, you just gonna have to make sure. The next thing I'm gonna talk about is where you're gonna keep them. That's one of the reasons I'm sitting where I'm sitting. When you start getting hogs, I don't care what age, pigs, middle-aged, full-grown, whatever, hogs. You're gonna have to put them in something that they do not get out. You don't want them to get out. If they do get out, don't panic. If they're used to feed, they'll come to feed. So don't get all worked up because they got out. Went out one morning, dog got to barking. It was night. I say morning, I don't know, 2, 3 o'clock a.m. The horse was out over across in the front yard next to the old railroad bed. I didn't panic. I just whistled. I got a rope I had in the truck. I put it around his neck and led him back over here. Now, if I'd been all jittery and trying to run up there, see, can't do that. Just act the same way you normally do when you're feeding them. Okay. And then another thing, so then you're gonna have to figure out where you're gonna keep these hogs. You can invest and go out and buy a bunch of stuff, and you may have to. When I was raising hogs, and there was two different places that I had them. Where I started out with pallets. Now, that's basically what this is over here. Those are pallets, okay? Those are divider pallets. Those are not the kind that's got the 2x4s running, or 2x3s or 2x4s. A couple of them running down with planks on top. But that's generally what you're going to find, and you can find these pallets where people want to give them away. If you can get you for two hogs, and you can just about think about how much more you might need if you got four hogs. But if you got two pigs, you know, normal size weaned pigs, you know, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months old, whatever. So you got these weaned pigs, okay? Then you're gonna have to make sure they don't get through them pallets, them are spaces in between the planks of those pallets. If you can get enough pallets to do it, that will cover a space 12 foot by 12 foot, okay? 16 by 16 foot, 20 foot by 20 foot. It don't make a whole lot of difference, because if you're going to slaughter these animals for food, then you don't want them running all over the place, running all their growth off. Okay, you want them to stay confined, satisfied, fed, and happy. Okay, and so but they're going to have some room. And I'm going to tell you something about hogs. They're different from goats, horses, cows. You say, well, duh, we know that. Well, here's what I mean with that. A cow will put out their waste. That means they'll urinate, or they'll put out dung, okay, manure. So let's use that word. Horses, they'll put out manure, they'll put out urine. Goats put out manure, they'll put out urine and manure, and they'll just sit down in it or lay down in it. Hogs won't do that. They're going to go to a neutral corner. So in this pen you're going to build, if you use these pallets, or if you don't want to use pallets and you want to buy these wire panels, now that's what that is over there beside of me. Those are wire panels. They come what's called a hog panel. I think they still make those. And I don't usually buy them because they're too short. But anyway, you can buy these here wire panels. Okay, they're 16 foot long. I think they're 32-inch tall and 46-inch tall, or it might be 48-inch tall. Okay, so they'll be 16 foot long and something like 48 inches tall. One good thing about them, now these pallets over are going to rot. After a while, you can use them, a couple of years, they're going to start rotting. And that's where the pigs and hogs are going to root out. They're going to root, They can't help it unless you wring their nose. They're gonna root, or unless you do what I knew one fella did when we lived in Tennessee. He owned a large acreage, and he raised sows to raise pigs, and that snout, that ridge on the end of their snout, he would cut that off when they were young, where they couldn't root. To root means they take their snout, their nose, and they dig up ground. Okay, if you want to plant some grass seed this fall in September, and you want all the dirt turned up in a certain area somewhere or another around rocks and trees and places like that, you get you some pigs, some hogs, they'll turn up the ground everywhere and then get them off of there and then sow it all down in grass seed, and grass seed will come up around rocks and trees and things because they've done got it there and worked all that up. Anyway, that's a horse of a different color. These wire panels, you can take them and use them and then take them down and use them some other place. The best pen to build, if you're real sure that's what you're going to do for an extended period of time, pour a slab of concrete. If you do that, you got the perfect place for a hog pen. Okay, that's going to cost quite a bit. And I would advise that if you never messed with hogs before, you need to get your feet wet and see the things that didn't work, the things you wish you'd have done better. I mean, it's it's going to be on the job training is what it's going to be. So you got to figure out some way to pin them up. You can use these pallets, and you can find enough of them laying around. People at these stores and things and places where they'll give them away. Okay, so that'll save you some there. Just put them together, nail them together. Take you a plank like you see at the bottom down there. Maybe put a plank at the bottom and nailing all them pallets together, and a plank across the top up there, nailing all those pallets together. And then if you decide you don't want to do that, because after a couple of years they are going to start rotting and then there won't be no count no more. And if you do decide you want to go and buy 4 of those wire panels from a feed store, these chain, I'm not really trying to advertise for these stores. They're not paying for me to advertise them, but you know what I'm talking about. There's some stores that are chain stores, and so they sell this farm equipment, and so you can buy these wire panels, and then you're either gonna have to buy some treated post to put in the ground. You can concrete them or just use your PhD post hole diggers and and put some post in the ground. You probably need to you're gonna have to put one on each corner, probably 2 in the middle of these wire panels, and you get 4 of them wire panels for 2 pigs should do it. You're going to have to feed them. You got to have something to put the feed in. They're going to have water, and more water in the summer, like it's been being with all this hot, humid weather. They're going to have shade, or some place to get in to where it's shady. And so you're going to have to figure out then when you start doing this, and don't tell me now that you can't build anything. You're going to have to learn. And I'm going to tell you something about building things like that. You're not trying to build for the public. So just make it strong and sturdy. You don't have to make it pretty. The hog don't care. Okay, and get your feet wet about building. That's all, if needs be, you try to find somebody in the family, in the neighborhood, somebody you work with that knows something about measuring and sawing and certain types of lumber. Maybe get them come over, and get out and work together and build this thing. So anyway, you're going to have feed and shelter. All right, what kind of feed? But I want to tell you something. If you're gardening and you got leftover squash, cucumbers, tomatoes that's gone bad, they won't be able to live and grow on that, but it's good to give them that. The main source, now they make feed, pelleted feed for hogs. It's going to cost more than shell corn. And the best way to do it, if you can, find a feed mill that sells shell corn in bulk. And if you got some way if you got a pickup truck, and they'll sell it to you by putting it just in the bed of a pickup truck, you're going to have to shovel it out into something else when you get home with it. Okay? But if you can buy it in bulk, whatever the least amount there, you can get it cheaper that way. And I know that they get tired of shell corn. That's the good thing about, compensating with other things like leftovers. I doubt you find in any restaurant anywhere that'll keep leftovers. That it's against the law, I think, for all of them to do that nowadays. But people used to do that years ago. They raised hog off of going to a restaurant like that or restaurants and picking up their slop, and they slop their hogs. There's people that go to where they make, I don't know what they make, whiskey, beer, one or the other, and they got this mash. Well, I don't know if they still let people come and get that to feed their hogs or not. Okay, so you got that option. Back years ago, I don't know, I don't see these stores no more, but back years ago, you could go and buy this outdated bread. Okay, these stores would sell day old bread, and if nobody bought it, then after a while, then they tried to sell a whole bunch of it for the least that they could, and get as much as they could out of it. Well, back years ago, I used to go by the day old bread store, and that they had discounted down real cheap. I'd get, probably a garbage bag full of that bread, bring it home, feed that to the hogs. But the mainstay for hogs is corn, shell corn. Okay, what you can do with shell corn, you can put it in barrels. Okay, 55-gallon barrels, whether it be a metal barrel, whether it's a plastic barrel, and you can put that shell corn in barrels and put water in it and swell it. And they like that swelled corn. Okay, so then you're gonna have to feed them. You're gonna have to water. So where you gonna get the water? Can you got enough hose? Are you willing to carry water? Or can you put this hog pen around a building like this building here? On this building, I've got a gutter down on each side of this barn, and with the gutter, then it comes out, and water at the end of this gutter, you can't see it, but right over yonder, I've got a 55-gallon drum cut in half. The other one's at the other barn up there. And so when it rains, it comes off of this metal roof down into that gutter, comes off of there down into that barrel. So that's how they get watered. If it gets dry and stays dry, I've got a creek right over there. And so I can go right over there and get water. And so that you got to figure out where you're going to get water. You don't have to use rainwater. You can use city water. Okay, if you own rural city water and so forth. And so you got enough hose. You know, it's redundant to say hose pipe, but if you got enough hose pipe, if you got enough garden hose to run out to where you're keeping the hogs, you can do that. Now, all right. The next thing you probably need to cut. You're going to have to build some type of place. If they're not under some trees where it's shady, you're going to have to build some type of a shelter, something with a roof on it. If you can have the back of it, prefer. I wouldn't put it right in the middle of the pen. I'd put it over in one corner, okay, and put the feed in troughed and water troughed over there, close to where they're going to be getting into this shelter, along the side of the pen that you've built there, where you can just do your watering and feeding just right over the pen into the trough, into the water trough. And if you're doing it all in one corner, more than likely, there, here, or over yonder, they're going to go over there and put out the manure and their urine. okay? So therefore then, you got to have some type of shelter. If it's got a back on it and it's got just a shed roof, okay, and it's tall enough where they can get up under it real good and it'll shade them and all this heat from the sun and everything, it'll shade them. So you're going to have to do some shading. I tell you something else hogs are going to do now. If they root and it rains, they're going to root around and they're going to eventually make a mud hole. That is not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, if you can keep some water in that place where they begin a mud hole, they'll like it. It helps with the flies, like that pestering fly right there. It helps with the flies and things like that. So a mud hole is right up a hog's alley. Okay. Then the next thing you need to think about, okay, so we've got these hogs up big enough now, and so what do we do now? We ready to try to process our meat. So now what? Well, that's a good question. When I was young, I was around hog killing. I never have done any. When I raised hogs, we always took them off and had a meat processing place to process our food, whether it be calves, steers, deer. Now, the last deer I did myself, but all the other deers I've had, took them off to the slaughterhouse and they processed it. The pigs, hogs, and things that we took off like that, that's where they went. So you're going to have to decide, are you going to do that yourself? Now, I tell you, when we lived in Tennessee, one time had some tall hogs I was ready to have slaughtered. I found a Amish, no, he was Mennonite, old order Mennonite. They drove the black vehicles, but they still didn't have any electricity and stuff like that. And what he did, I hauled the hogs to him, and he put them to sleep. He degutted them. He scalded them and scraped them. And if you don't know what that means, then you need to learn. It just means that to scald them in hot water, and then they scrape all the hair off of them, and then he would block them out. What does that mean? He would quarter up the animal, and then you come and guide it, and then you process the rest of it yourself. Okay, if you take it to a place that processes beef, pork, goats, deer, things like that, they'll know what to do. Now, it's going to cost a little something or other, but the one thing about raising this stuff on your own, you know what you got. Okay, if there wasn't a bunch of hormones to make them grow and you don't want that and you didn't feed them or give them anything like that and you didn't vaccinate for whatever reason, you might have had to initially for something or along the way for something, but a couple of months or so before you had them slaughtered, there was no kind of vaccinations at all. You didn't worm them or anything. So you know what you got. See, that's a benefit of doing this on your own like this out here and growing this stuff. If you process it yourself, you go to YouTube. I haven't checked it out, but I can just about guarantee you're going to find somebody to tell you what the process is of either skinning or scalding and scraping these hogs and processing this meat yourself. You're either going to have to cut it all off the bone, or you're going to have to get a meat saw, like a big overgrown hacksaw, or you might use a sawzall, but it's going to be messy. Or there's people, if you're going to get into this and do it regularly, you might invest in a meat saw. Okay, it's sort of like a bandsaw, but it's made to process meat with. So really the most convenient thing to do is just when you think they're about ready, well, judging at them and looking at them and things like that, you think they're about ready, find you some place that will process them. You go, don't just lickety split load them and take them over there. You're going to have to go there. You're going to have to find out when it is that they can take them. And it could be, if it's during deer season, deer hunting time, it might be spring before they can do it. Okay. So, but I don't know. I don't know what everybody's schedule is at these processing plants, but you're going to have to go there and talk to them, tell them what you got, what you want, and then they'll tell you when it is that you can bring them in. And then you need to try to bring them in on that date. All right. If they tell you they can take them, they're going to take them. You need to get them on in and at that date and let them, work them up. And when you do, you're going to go and you're going to pick up your meat. Okay. And then everything will be done. It'll be froze. All you got to do, and that's the next question. You got a freezer. Sometimes you can buy a good used freezer, or you can go and buy a brand new freezer. But you're going to have to, keep this meat somehow or another. And most people, we always kept them in freezer. Okay. And when you do that, then they'll, unless you're going to want the hams salted. Some people like country ham. What does that mean? They take these hams and they take these shoulders and they put them in salt. And on these warmer winter days, most people slaughtered hogs on Thanksgiving. And they threw the meat up on the roof and let it freeze overnight. Then they would get it off the next day and work it up with their knives, butcher knives and things, because you can cut that meat better when it's cold than it does when it's warm. That's the thing of throwing it up on the roof. The dogs and things couldn't get it up there, and they'd throw the meat up on the roof, hams and shoulders. And then you have your sausage, if they do bacon, okay? If they do bacon, you can have bacon. And when it comes to hogs, there's a lot of people that eat just about everything. From the heel, the tail, the ears, the jaw, the brains, they make souse. The entrails, they make chitlins. I mean, they everything except the squealer. Okay. So anyway, it's just according to how much of that hog you want to use for food, and you can use a whole lot of it. Okay. So anyway, I think that's about everything. And the one that I'm particularly making this far, if you got any more questions, you can put them in the comment section, and I'll try to zero in on that particular question. And so anyway, I'm going to get off here. Been on here what? 33 minutes. Well, that's better than reading a book or me trying to sit down and write one. So I'm going to get off here now. So until we meet again, have a good one.